This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network. I mean, what more can I say? But just pure, unadulterated joy about what this community has turned into in such a short period of time. Every morning now, I'm waking up to 800 messages about all the people that are winning our obscure DP World Tour bets. We all hammered my second cousin, Elliot Spizzirri, in a tennis challenge tour match. We have wall-to-wall Oscars coverage. I am so deep in this Oscar stuff. I just banged out a 3-hour pod. Not that I recorded, that I listened to, breaking down the Oscars betting market. Shout out to all my Brutalist boys. So, at the end of the day, I'll keep the ad reads brief. If you haven't joined, give it a shot for a week. I just think you're really missing out on the sharpest community and family for not just golf, but all golf adjacent as well, except we only charge one price for everything. It's truly a wild deal. And we want it to be for everyone too. We made it this price for a reason. We also have a student discount. There are a lot of younger college kids in there that are getting serious into learning about how to utilize advanced analytics and golf course architecture, which is something that's really important to me as well. So InsideSportsNetwork.com, shoot me a DM. I'm here to help. I will personally answer any questions you have. I really care about making this the best and most informative place possible for everyone. And of course, truly proud of what it's turned into in such a short period of time. Even if you don't want to join the Discord, which is truly where the magic happens, you can still absolutely support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. We're bumping up against 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it would mean the world if you are watching this on YouTube and you want us to continue to keep grinding out all of this free content as well. We've had a lot of talk behind the scenes about whether we should be making stuff like this show premium too, but I think we do have a solid balance right now of the best stuff being behind the paywall, but still prioritizing an absolute ton of free content. And to keep that going, a simple subscribe or like or comment on this video goes a really long way for us. Okay, sweet. I'm recording this at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday morning, about an hour before the Waiters tee off at Pebble Beach. I was going to record late last night, and then the Luka trade happened, and it kind of completely derailed my night, I have to say. But Pebble has been pretty awesome this week. I really wanted a huge week of matchups because I felt like the matchups hadn't been up to my usual standards. We had the Mega Whale Bomb Play of the Year Supermax Generational Wealth play on Russell Henley over Max Grazerman, and that was never a fair fight. And we're once again taking a nice little DFS sweat into Sunday. I need Lowry to win bad. If Lowry wins and Henley finishes top 5, I will be in phenomenal shape. And of course, we talked extensively on the Wednesday premium show about the low-owned opportunity on Mr. Rory McIlroy this week. I, of course, did not listen to my co-hosts in Rishi and Kobe. I decided that building around Morikawa and I'll take the big L there, that building around Morikawa and Cantlay was a wiser decision than a 13% Rory McIlroy, which Kobe and Rishi slammed, of course. You guessed it, Kobe wins over 6 figures today if Rory somehow gets it done. So I need Lowry and Henley bad. Two of my absolute guys. I mean, the Henley thing, of course, goes without saying if you've been listening to me for a while now. Both of those guys were core plays for me at think at least 2 out of the 4 majors. And I continue to believe that an 8K, 8% Lowry on a hard golf course or a golf course that is experiencing some adverse weather conditions remains the best investment in sports outside of our guy Elliot Spizzeri on the Challenge Tour. But yeah, Lowry was a core play for me at 2 of the last 4 majors at the same price and ownership. So whenever Lowry is between 8K and 8.6 and under 12% on a hard golf course or a tournament featuring bad weather, it's always a slam for me. And once again, he delivered big time. We saw a huge edge in the weather this week too. It looks like we're going to cash again on that under winning score bet unless Sepp Straka blacks out and shoots -5. Uh, our guy, Twitterless Steve, has been out here grinding with prop specific content every single night. We hit a ton of overscoring props with the wind expected to really heat up on Saturday afternoon. And I think that continues to be our biggest edge is knowing how the golf course is actually going to play, which is my biggest strength in doing this. Better than picking players, I can certainly tell you that, or anything else that I do, is understanding how a golf course is actually going to play and understanding what the scoring average is going to be. And that was so meaningful at Pebble this week. Like if you do not give yourself the closest understanding of what the winning score is going to be on a given week and getting the scoring average right, which is what we devote more time to than basically anything else in our analysis, you're just going to get crushed by those of us who are diving deep into that. So, shaping up to be another awesome week at ISN. But one of our big pillars here is also devoting just as much time to doing an autopsy on what we got wrong. I think spending time on that is more important than celebrating the dubs. And I wish more people on Twitter realize that, like, hey, it's okay if you're wrong. You're going to get things wrong every single week. By lying about what you got wrong or never acknowledging it, people are just going to see right through it. And at this point, with the team that we have around us, we're going to get a lot of things right every single week. That's just our standard here. But because we have cultivated the culture and the results speak for themselves on the dubs, I really always try and spend time thinking about the losses too and analyzing those. And I gotta say, I'm gonna take a big L on JT this week. I'm just so frustrated with the second tier of golfers outside of the very elite in Scheffler. Like, I think most people on the internet this week bet one of Justin Thomas, me, Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, or Ludwig. And none of those guys are going to win. And none of those guys really had an opportunity to win heading into Sunday either, to be honest. Yeah, just a huge L for me on JT. And I played Cantlay and Colin in DFS too. Both of those were core plays for me in DFS along with Henley and Denny. And that's just not good enough. It could work out because the other two in my single entry are Lowry and Henley. But the nuts, what you needed to do was really Rory at that ownership. You have such an advantage if you have Rory at that ownership, which is why I'm kicking myself not listening to Kobe more and seizing that opportunity. And I still think it's very much in play that Colin or Cantlay have a big Sunday and shoot up the leaderboard. But these guys like JT, Colin, and Cantlay, those three guys, and I play them a lot, they just need to contend more. Like, they do not remotely have as high of a floor that I want to give them credit for. Every single week, finishing 35th out of 80 players in a signature event is like a very reasonable outcome for guys like Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, and Patrick Cantlay, and they almost get priced like they are an auto top 15. And I feel like I treat them like they are going to be an auto top 10 to 15. And we'll talk about it a lot more this week as it pertains to someone like JT versus maybe going all in on Scotty at the top. And like truly how much better Scotty is right now than this second tier group of Colin, Cantlay, JT that are always between 14 to 1 and 25 to 1 every week. And they just aren't sniffing it close to enough to continue to invest this much on them at their price point. And I would still say I'm long-term bullish on Colin, Cantlay, JT. I do believe that all three of those players will win this year, but they also very well couldn't. And I just think one of the big L's for me this year has been, and there's, I was heavy on Cantlay at the Amex too as a core play, and I think he finished fifth. But just slightly, oh no, you know what? I had Cantlay as a core play at Kapalua where he finished 15th and used Sung Jae as a core play at the Amex. So I played Cantlay at the Amex, but I even had more Sung Jae than Cantlay. So that's another L. And I think one of like maybe the biggest mistake I've made this year has been just like slightly to moderately overrating the floor / ceiling of those three players. Now, Colin, runner up at Century, was great for me. I don't think he's going to finish runner up this week for me as a core play. We'll see how Colin and Cantlay perform for my DFS lineups on Sunday. But JT was a really bad bet. I understand why I made it, but I expected a lot more from him this week on this golf course. And we'll talk about how likely he is to bounce back next week when we dive into Phoenix. So let's go. One of my favorite events of the year. I really like Phoenix. I actually really like the golf course. As a PGA, it's not a golf course that if I was going to Phoenix, I would seek out to play personally at the price point that it is. But I think it is one of the best PGA Tour events on the schedule that has a distinct personality. It's consistently and to be honest with you, this is how more tour events should be. Like, they don't have to have a top 100 golf course in America. They don't have to have the best field every single week. Of course, these guys are going to want to take some off weeks, but every single tour event should have some semblance of a personality. Like, there's so many tour events in the latter half of the summer, like Detroit or Minnesota, where it's like, okay, if you were to describe the Rocket Mortgage Classic in one sentence, what would you say? What is the personality there? Okay, it's Rocket Mortgage Week. What does that mean? Does that mean we're going to get 30 under and guys driving greens left and right? Does that mean we're going to get an event with a shot clock? Does that mean we're going to get a super quirky golf course that's really short and narrow with thick rough and a bunch of hazards? Like, get creative. I don't really care what the personality is. Just give us variety and give us events that have a personality. And I think that waste, as we like to call it, has a personality. It's pure, unadulterated fun. Although it seemingly rubbed right against the fine line between fun and shit show last year. I've never been to the event. I gotta be honest, like, I'm going to a bachelor party in Scottsdale in a couple weeks. Going to the Phoenix Open is not like high on my list of golf experiences that I want to knock off in my lifetime. I feel like I've maybe aged out of that one just a little bit, but I love what it's trying to do, and succeeding at, by the way. I'm really excited to talk to Gabby Herzig tomorrow about both her experience at Pebble and her experience last year at Waste when it got a little crazy, and what she expects this year at Waste, covering it on the grounds and inside the ropes. And I actually think the golf course is pretty good too. I think that it has a lot of what we should be looking for in PGA Tour golf courses. Now, it plays completely in the middle in terms of required skill set. Like, it's one of the most well-balanced golf courses on tour in terms of my model identifying the type of skill set that is going to make the most sense here. I'm like right around average in every single one of my stat categories. And it's a golf course that allows players of all shapes and sizes and skill sets to compete. It doesn't beat players up enough to discourage them from coming. It's not a banal putting contest where tee to green skill is mitigated. Elite, you don't need to be super long, and you don't need to be a great putter. And players can go super low on this track and make birdies in bunches, and there's still enough trouble lurking at every turn. And that's why you get the winning score of 17 to 21 under every year. And I think that really is probably the best version of the PGA Tour. We need to cut out some of the 27 under par golf courses. And I'm okay with it once or twice a year. Kapalua is just whatever, I guess. Hang on to your pants, 35 under. That's fine once or twice a year, particularly if it's a cool setting and the golf course is fun to watch. But I think, and trust me, if I had it my way, the average PGA Tour event would be closer to 15 under par. I just like seeing guys struggle more than make birdies, but I may be in the minority there. Although I don't think I'm in as that much of the minority there, having my pulse on a lot of golf fans that I interact with every week. Like, I really don't think it's a hot take by any means anymore to want to see more of a challenge than just see a lot of birdies. But I think if the PGA Tour is just in a zone right now with technology where they should be shooting for 20 under every week, I guess. And Phoenix is probably like the best version of that, right? It was designed by Jay Morrish and Tom Weiskopf in 1986 with a Weiskopf redesign in 2014. Rest in peace. Par 71, 7,261 yards. It's got that overseed, right? The Poe Trivialis overseed. So exactly what we saw at PGA West last 2 weeks. And the rough is a joke. I mean, overseeded rough, this has the lowest rough penalty on the entire PGA Tour, just like PGA West. So anytime you have overseeded rough, total joke between the fairway and the rough. The only thing that you can't do on this golf course is hit the ball in the desert. And the desert is really so far offline on, many of these golf holes that it is not going to deter players whatsoever from hitting a ton of drivers. This is one of the most driver-heavy courses on the entire PGA Tour, and keep in mind that it plays at a little bit of altitude, so it's even shorter than the scorecard would suggest. I'm generally not the biggest fan of TPC style architecture. I think it's a little gimmicky for my taste, but I think that TPC Scottsdale and TPC Sawgrass outlined the ideal template for the best version of TPC style architecture. It's not about homogeneous execution. There are some legitimate shot values and decisions that players will need to make. I think at this point, like, everybody just hits driver on all of the par fours. So there probably could be some strategic improvements to the par fours here with the advances of technology. I think back in the day, um, when the bunkers were a little more correctly aligned with carry distance, there was a lot more strategy off the tee at this golf course. But still, sometimes in the mornings, if it plays really cold, like last year, we had a really difficult round one. I'm not sure if you remember. And then it played super easy for the rest of the week. One thing that I would mention too, this is another great tidbit, that this is the type of stuff that we talk about in the Discord all day. But over the last 5 years, something I noticed is that this golf course plays a stroke harder on average in round one than it does over the weekend. So I don't know if that is, because generally, often the golf course firms up and gets harder over the weekend. But like last year, for example, it played really cold on Thursday, and then it warmed up and played quite easy over the weekend. I'm gonna monitor the weather this week pretty closely, as I always do. But this is a golf course that I've played wave advantages at in the past. This golf tournament has had wave advantages in the past. Now, what I'm seeing in the weather this early is very benign. And I think my early prediction, will update this in the Discord every day, but my early prediction is that this is going to be the easiest scoring at TPC Scottsdale that we've seen in quite some time. But anyway, back to the golf course. Like 16, the famous par three, way better setting than an actual golf hole. It's not an interesting par three by any means, but it's a fun setting. And I think 18 in its current 18 needs a big upgrade. 18 is just not a great finishing hole anymore. I really like 17, and my friend Joseph Lamagna disagrees with me on this. He's not the hugest fan of 17, the drivable par four. I think it is an immensely engaging drivable par four. I will concede that a lot of the strategy of it has been lost. And in some ways, it's very much like the 10th hole at Riviera, where players have somewhat, they've optimized the way to play the hole. And if you understand golf course strategy, then you're all going to do the same thing on a golf hole. And I think some of the best golf holes are the ones that do not have a clear roadmap to success, or you could make the case that there are multiple different ways to get to the same right answer. I mean, that is the headliner sentence in understanding strategic architecture, right? Does this golf hole give you variety and options? I mean, that is the very definition of shot values right there, is how are certain shots rewarded on a golf hole versus others? And I think it's very difficult for most of the shot value on the PGA Tour to not be compromised because of how optimized equipment has been. And the days where laying I mean, all of the advanced analytics, all of the stuff that I talk to PGA Tour pros about, I'm basically just repeating the same sentence over and over again. Hit driver as much as possible. Angles do not matter for you when you have that type of spin control into receptive greens with your wedges than the amateur. Um, Podcast for a different day. I still think 17 is pretty fun to watch. Um, And the golf course, like I said, it always plays right around middle of the pack in scoring. Sometimes it's a little cold, sometimes it's a little windy, but there just isn't a tremendous amount of scoring variance to this golf course. Last year, it was just the opening round that played cold and difficult, like I mentioned. Then over the final 3 rounds, the golf course was receptive and a lot easier. Again, looking at the weather conditions 5 days out, I would expect easier scoring than last year, just because I don't think you're going to get that round one that plays round even par. I've been the best thing my biggest successes this year have been nailing the winning scores, and I'm going to wait to give my final answer as I always do in the Wednesday article, but it's been between 17 and 21 under the last 5 years. I'm going to say we break that. I'm going to say 22 or 23 under this year. And if you look at those who have played well here, it's generally like a very proper combination of above average off the tee skill and approach skill that stands out as the safest through line. In terms of off the tee here, it's a pretty even balance between distance and accuracy. And it is a very driver heavy golf course. I mean, we had a driver usage percentage of like 85% last year compared to the tour average of 67%. Do not be fooled by the fact that there are cacti. Players will hit driver here everywhere. And due to the fact that we are at altitude, it typically ranks as one of the longest golf courses in average driving distance on the PGA Tour. No rough penalty at all. 41st out of 43 courses in missed fairway penalty, 40th out of 43 courses in rough penalty. There's virtually zero difference between playing from the fairway and the negligible Bermuda overseeded rough. On the other hand, it does rank 9th in fraction of missed fairways that result in a penalty stroke. So you really just can't miss big. And at the end of the day, it's a driver heavy golf course where hitting the fairway is not incredibly important. But what is important is avoiding the desert and the water hazards. So we really want to identify players who can gain an advantage via their elite driving while not having to worry about them keeping it on the planet. So in my opinion, this is a great week to look at strokes gained off the tee recently, who's driving the ball well at the moment, distance to the edge of the fairway, and good drive percentage. All stats, particularly distance to the edge of the fairway, that is exclusive to the rabbit hole, which again, just incredibly. If you're not using it, you're just getting left behind. And yeah, my mind went in a different direction about the rabbit hole and how people are looking at models, and save that conversation for another day, because I think the most important thing here is identifying the statistics off the tee this week that are going to grant you a specific edge on this specific golf course. And you need to be doing that every single week. And I mean, it speaks for itself, obviously, but like, for example, in distance to the edge of the fairway, a statistic specific to the rabbit hole and how much more valuable that is than looking at driving accuracy is because driving accuracy is a very binary stat. It's 1 or 0. Did you hit the fairway or did you not hit the fairway? It lacks the additional context that you need. So that's another giant red flag. If somebody's talking about this guy's accurate off the tee because of his driving accuracy, it doesn't remotely tell any of the story. And that's why, like, hello, like flashing red lights, like you need these edges. They freaking matter. I shouldn't have to say that. It sells itself. But what distance to the edge of the fairway does is it's going to help provide some really important context on the varying degrees of misses. It's going to help you identify who are the players that are not missing big. And what do you know? The number one guy in distance to the edge of the fairway is Scotty Scheffler, who never misses huge, never puts himself out of position off the tee. And that's why he ranks so well on good drive percentage, which essentially measures the amount of greens in regulation you hit if you're not in the fairway, plus the drives that you hit in the fairway, which is another way to weed out some of the types of players that really put themselves behind the 8 ball off the tee. And that, I think, is what you need to focus on primarily at TPC Scottsdale. Is driving matters this week. You can gain a real edge from being a great driver of the ball this week. I don't particularly care whether you're doing that with your distance or accuracy, but it's a golf course where you're going to hit driver so much. And so if you're a great driver of the ball, if you're long and not wild, because I don't care whether you hit the fairway or not, but if you're long and you're not wild, or if you can just ensure me that no matter what, you are not missing big and keeping it out of the trouble, that's a big asset for you this week. It's very evenly weighted historically in terms of the importance of driving accuracy and driving distance. And you look at, you know, Scotty Scheffler, Hideki Matsuyama, and Brooks Koepka make up 50% of the last 10 champions. Okay. All of them are above average drivers, both in distance and accuracy often. Brooks sometimes loses a little bit in terms of accuracy. Hideki sometimes sacrifices a little bit distance, but overall, all of these guys gain consistently off the tee, and all of them are excellent middle iron players. Okay. You have close to 50% of shots coming from 150 to 200 yards. And considering the low degree of difficulty of these greens, like we're done with POA for this week at least. Okay. So we are back to putting on smooth carpet. The make percentage from 4 to 8 feet this week, we're right back to 57, 58, 60%. Whereas on POA, it was 50%. So the value of putting this week is a lot less than it would be on POA. And we do have a somewhat strong historical precedent of bad putters playing well in Phoenix because these greens are remarkably straightforward. And when I talk about Scotty Scheffler in a moment here, and I talk about the reasons why I bet Scotty Scheffler here in the past, shout out the days when Scotty Scheffler was 28 to 1. I have lost so much money with Scotty Scheffler getting in front of my outrights. But you know what? Since tout course history is now a thing that we like to joke about, I will always have Scotty 28 to 1 in Phoenix in 2022 as Scotty Scheffler's first win on the PGA Tour. Was I on him the following year when he was 13 to 1 and went back to back? Absolutely not. But one of the reasons why I love Scotty in Phoenix, and you guys know me, I'm not like a Scotty dick rider. Like there are many times where I will come here and say, I think it's wise to fade Scotty this week based on the golf course. It's golf course dependent for me, and I didn't play Scotty at Pebble. Although, that's not really a Vic lap. Like, I think he very well could finish top 5 this week. It doesn't seem like he's going to win, but again, you faded Scotty, you played Scotty at Pebble. I think there's arguments for both. Let's see how he does on Sunday. At this event, I always play Scotty. And last year, I played Scotty in 100% of my lineups. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is if you look at his numbers on these overseeded greens, and these are the same greens that he had a lot of success at the Houston Open in the past. These are the same greens as TPC Sawgrass, where Scotty has putted like better than average. And obviously he wins TPC Sawgrass every year. You want to play Scotty on overseeded Bermuda. Now he's great on bent too. He's had his wins on Bermuda. Scotty's just at the point where he's won on everything now. So it's like saying Scotty is a good course fit here. It's like saying, well, Tiger won at this course and Tiger won at that. Tiger wins every year. But I think that this is the putting surface that is best suited for Scotty Scheffler. This overseeded Bermuda where there's not a lot of slope or undulation to the greens. We saw him get himself into trouble at places like Pinehurst in the past, which features a lot faster greens with a lot more undulation. And Waste does have fast greens, but Scotty's putted so well here, and that's why I think it's a great. I mean, one of the more perfect golf courses for Scotty Scheffler because I don't think he gives up much of an advantage on the greens. And yet it is still a golf course that very heavily accentuates a combination of strong total driving that very much accentuates elite middle iron play. And if you combine distance and accuracy, and if you look at 150 to 200 yards, Scotty Scheffler is the best player in the world at both of those two things. And now you put him on greens that I don't think disadvantage him as much as other PGA Tour greens would. So, we can finish up on Scotty in a second, but just to put a bow on the golf course, it's one of the most balanced golf courses on the PGA Tour in terms of skill set. And I think if you're taking away anything from this podcast, if you are elite at something, whether it's not, I guess short game the least here, but that's the case most weeks, whether you are an elite driver of the ball in both distance and accuracy or one of the two, if you are an elite overall approach player or middle iron player, or if you have the ability to totally black out on the greens, there's a path to you winning Scottsdale. And despite this tournament being generally won by elite ball strikers, last year, Nick Taylor and Charlie Hoffman, they made the playoff last year ranking first and second in strokes gained putting. So last year, for example, was not like the prior years of Scotty, Hideki, Brooks, guys that were below average putters and won it almost exclusively with their middle iron play and driving. You can still win this event by blacking out on the greens. That's what both Nick Taylor and now they were also 9th and 2nd in approach play. Okay. So it's not like Charlie Hoffman and Nick Taylor hit their irons poorly. They both hit their irons great. And even for what it's worth, Sam Burns and Scotty Scheffler, who finished 3rd and 4th, they ranked 1st and 2nd off the tee. So it's not like driving the ball well wasn't important either. And I think that breakdown of the leaderboard is no better illustration than the general point that I'm trying to make about this being the most balanced golf course on the PGA Tour for separation. And if you are elite at something, there's a way for you to win at TPC Scottsdale. Point being, is a path for everyone. It's one of the most balanced models of the year in terms of providing equal footing to all 4 strokes gained categories as they relate to tour average. And surprisingly, it not, I guess I shouldn't say surprisingly, but it features one of the strongest correlations of course history on the PGA Tour as well. So I don't know if it's getting used to the rowdy environment because it's really not a golf course anymore with a ton of strategic nuance off the tee. It's pretty much driver everywhere, but experience really matters here, in my opinion. We had one player, our guy, Andy Noves. He was the only first timer last year to finish in the top 10 in a full field event. And in 2023, just one player in the top 20 was a debutant. So whether it has anything to do with being more comfortable in a rowdy environment or not, course history remains incredibly important at TPC Scottsdale. And the course generally rewards well-rounded players of, all shapes and sizes. So Scotty's been tremendous here. Justin Thomas has been tremendous here. Hideki Matsuyama has been tremendous here. That's what I think is kind of interesting this week is that the top 3 players on the odds board, Scotty, Justin, Hideki, all have incredible course history. Not to mention, like, he slide down a little bit further, and Sam Burns, and Sung JM have also been awesome, awesome, awesome here. So let's take a quick 30-second break to hear a word from our advertisers, and we will finish up with the model. Okay, we are back. So, top 20 in my model this week. Number one, Scotty Scheffler, pretty big gap. To be honest with you, in my opinion, this is a golf course that I would be properly scared of Scotty Scheffler. Now, I'm not going to bet the without Scotty market. Okay. I think that at the end of the day, I view Scotty as like, what are the golf courses that he has the highest floor at? And I just think this happens to be a golf course where he has a really, really high floor. Um, I still think that there are a ton of tail outcomes where he doesn't win the tournament. I just think that based on the setup of this golf course, this is one of the highest likelihood tournaments that he finishes top five. And I already laid out a number of reasons for that, but I don't really believe in the free square thing in DFS. I think it's a major red flag if people talk about that unless it's a bit in golf based on the variance. But I think that this is as close to a high floor situation as it gets on Scotty. And I've played him in 100% of my lineups last year at Phoenix. I've bet him here outright before. And I even talked about on the top of, I'm a little bit lower on JT and Hideki this week, and Sung Jae and Sam Burns. I'm okay on all of them. They're not my favorite in that rank. Like, Tom Kim is my favorite, to be honest with you. And so I think a lot of my lineups this week are going to be Scheffler, Tom Kim. Now, we'll see what the ownership comes in at. I don't know how Scheffler's playing on Sunday yet. I am very much rooting for him to not play well on Sunday, both for my DFS lineups and also, I think unfortunately if Scotty has a good Sunday and even finishes like a backdoor T4, and it's like, okay, he didn't win the golf tournament, but all concerns are quelled about whether Scotty is back to the level that he was playing prior to the injury. If you get Scotty backdooring himself into a T4 at Pebble, or like even finishing in a uncompetitive seventh where he doesn't have a chance to win the tournament, but it's like, okay, couple missed putts here and there. Like, we're kind of back to the point where outside of one or two events of the year, Scotty's going to finish top 10 every single week. He could be 50% owned this week in Phoenix. Like, this is not one of those weeks where I'm even going to argue strongly again. Now, tune into our Wednesday premium show because that's the best discussion. That's when we have all of the ownership. That's when I bring on Rishi and Kobe and Kyle, who are three of the best contrarian players, both at the high stakes and GPP level, and are the best people. Is why I brought them on to be a part of this company. They're like the best people I know at breaking down and analyzing the pro con case for situations like these in DFS. And we're super proud of that Wednesday show. It's kind of grown into like one of our favorite pieces of content that we do every week. It gets really, really rowdy and fun in there. And that's our one YouTube for members only. And it has to be for members only because we are ripping kind of absurd takes in that one. It's not the most politically correct stream, but I think the conversation on Scotty Scheffler this week, interesting. I'm excited to monitor it and talk about it all week. I mean, you have to keep in mind, he was 38% this week in Pebble. I underprojected him. I thought that he was going to be 30%, and he was 38% in Pebble. So what that means is a lot of people at the 11th hour came in and were like, what are we doing here, guys? It's still Scotty at the end of the day. at that price point, and this week now in a full field on a better golf course for him than Pebble Beach, unless he really screws the boot on Sunday and there's like images of him on the broadcast of like grasping his hands. What is the case for Scotty being less owned this week than he was last week? None. Even the people that were holdouts on Scotty last week and said to themselves, okay, I need to see it coming back from injury. If he finishes 7th, like, come on, what's the concern there? Let me run through the rest of the top 20 in my model, and then I'm going to tell you guys who I bet because I made 3 bets. And these were released to the Discord early because a lot of these numbers have already moved or are on the move. And I would recommend betting all 3 of these guys if you haven't and are interested before Monday morning, because I think the numbers that I got were phenomenal. Hideki Matsuyama, Kurt Kitayama is number 3, your winner of the 2025 Phoenix Open. Mav McNeely, number 4. I really like Mav in Phoenix. Ben Griffin, number 5. We are so back on the Ben Griffin train. Our guy during the fall swing. JT 6, Daniel Berger 7. Whew. Sam Burns 8, Doug Gim 9, Cooch 10. We love our guy Cooch. Shout out Dave. Cooch is a phenomenal top 20 bet this week. He's not winning shit anymore, but like Cooch a really good DFS play. 11 Tom Kim, 12 Sung JM, 13 Billy Horschel, 14 Andrew Novak, 15 Tom Hoagie, 16 JT Poston, 17 Andy Putz, 18 DT Davis Thompson, 19 Nick Taylor, 20 Corey Connors. So I made 3 bets. I bet Tom Kim 45 to 1 on DraftKings. I bet Kurt Kitayama 60 to 1 on DraftKings. And I bet Daniel Berger 110 to 1 on DraftKings. The only one that I'm worried about getting worse is Daniel Berger. Like, I could see a buck open up like a rogue 150 to 1 on Daniel Berger, but you can usually cash out on DraftKings. Let's do Tom Kim first. And I will tell you mainly why I bet Tom Kim. Now, he is playing great at Pebble, but I was just so confused to open up DraftKings and see that Tom Kim was 45 to 1 and Sung J M was 20 to 1. Make that make sense to me. Tom Kim wins more than Sung J M. Tom Kim is playing better than Sung J.M. At Pebble this week. I know that Sung J was great at Torrey, and I'm a Sung J guy. I understand he's a big model breaker, and Data Golf generally loves Sung J, and I'm aligned with Data Golf on a lot of advanced analytics stuff. So guys like Sung J and Kurt Kitayama, places like Data Golf and myself are always going to love those guys, but I cannot see the argument for the life of me that Sung J M is a demonstrably better golfer than Tom Kim with more upside. I don't see that. Like, if you have Tom Kim and Sung J down the stretch for an outright bet, who would you prefer in your corner, Tom Kim or Sung J? I don't know if that one's close, to be honest. And I have them as basically equal course fits. Like, the difference between Sung J on this golf course is minimal. They're both like 10 and 11 in my model. And Tom Kim at 45 to 1 compared to Sung J 20. Tom Kim 45 to 1 and Corey Connors 30. What are we doing? So that was just one of the easiest number grabs for me in the field. We talked about distance to the edge of the fairway, a stat that Scotty Scheffler ranks number 1 at, that measures the degree of your misses. Tom Kim number 2. Tom Kim keeps the ball on the planet. He is not crazy long by any means, but Tom Kim is a really good driver of the golf ball. Really solid driver of the golf ball. He's not going to overpower the golf course with distance, but like, you could Tom Kim on driver heavy courses where you need to keep the ball in play. This is a golf course where Tom Kim can easily gauge strokes off the tee at. Phenomenal approach player. He's rock solid between 150 and 200 yards. He's played well at this golf course in the past. 17th last year. This week at Pebble Beach, he's playing well. He's gaining strokes in all 4 major categories. He's putting well. He's chipping well. He's hitting his irons well. He's driving the ball phenomenally well. just a pure number grab. 45-1 on Tom Kim is nuts stuff, particularly compared to like the Sung Jae and Corey Connors numbers and some of the guys that are ahead of him. And then Kitayama, your winner of the 2025 Phoenix Open, Kurt Kitayama. This guy's either winning waste or is coming in second to Scotty Scheffler, but got 60-1. And our guy RB has Kitayama already at 80-1 from an earlier number. I think 60 is fine. Kitayama is a guy that gets steamed to the moon by people that understand modeling. Because if you understand modeling like Data Golf does, it's gonna come up a lot of Kitayama that this guy has elite approach upside. Like we're talking the ability to gain over 10 strokes on approach in any given week. We're talking about the ceiling from a ball striking stats. He's one of the few guys in this field that can like in a given week can produce similar ball striking numbers to Scheffler. Now, the floor is way lower. That's why one guy is plus 320 and the other guy is 60-1. And one guy's like the best golfer since Tiger Woods and the other guy's Kurt Kitayama. But in terms of like, and this is why I love betting Kitayama outright, although like he gets steam sometimes to 30-1 in weaker fields because he's such a model darling. That's why the 60 to me in this field was like awesome. 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 I think he'd be 9K this week and like 35-1 without Scotty in this field. And the misleading part of his Tory, like the irons came back for him at Tory. He regressed a little bit to start the season. He finished like 53rd, 37th, missed cut. You do a deeper dive on those finishes. Yeah, there was some regression coming from because he was the best ball striker of the entire fall swing with multiple top tens, and he gained like over 6 strokes on approach in 3 straight starts, which is just silly, silly stuff. The iron started to come back for him at Torrey Pines. And he's played phenomenal at this golf course too. He finished 23rd and 8th here. He gained strokes in all 4 major categories in both appearances. And just like Scheffler, I think the easy, straightforward nature of TPC Scottsdale's greens is a massive benefit for a player that's really only struggles with the putter. I mean, we've seen Kitayama take down an even stronger field at a signature event at Bay Hill. Kitayama can absolutely win this week. And then the third bet I made was Daniel Berger, 110-1. This is a situation we've been monitoring closely at Inside Sports Network. He's starting to pop up statistically for me a lot. For better or worse, like huge L by me at Sony. I bet him at Sony, I think at 45-50-1, and he missed a cut. Bad bet. And then he came back the next week at the Amex and finished top 20. But I think Daniel Berger's close. I do. And he's played great at this golf course in the past. 4 top 15 finishes and 9 appearances. He's driving the ball phenomenally well. And it's kind of the same concern with Kitayama. It's the last thing to come back for him is the putting, but he's putted so well on these greens in the past. And I think these are some of the easiest like get right greens on the PGA Tour. So I think that guys like Kitayama and Berger and Scheffler, for that matter, if they're going to putt well anywhere, this is a very good golf course for you to solve some putting woes and get back on the right track from a confidence perspective on the greens. And I love what Berger's starting to do from a ball striking perspective. I love how he's driving the ball right now. This is a type of golf course that he has played tremendously well at in the past. I like him on TPC style architecture. I like him on overseeded Bermuda. I think there's upside there at 110-1. And then, that gives me a lot of room. 45, 60, 110-1. Some other guys that I'm swimming around. I really like Mav. I really like Ben Griffin. Don't think I'll get there on JT Hideki Burns. Sung Jae. Probably end up playing one of them in DFS, but I think Tom Kim's the move in that zone in terms of an outright bet. Billy Horschel will be monitoring that situation. Doug Gim will be monitoring that situation. I kind of like DT, Davis Thompson. We'll be monitoring that one. But that will do it for me. Enjoy the final round of Pebble Beach. We would love to have you join Inside Sports Network. Just a really fun hang and place for sharp information. If you are listening to this podcast and you've made it an hour through this podcast and you are not at Inside Sports Network yet, that this is the place for you. You have a home because you just suffered through a podcast where I talked deeply about golf course analysis and agronomy, which isn't for everyone. But that's why I appreciate you guys so much, because I know this information matters to so many people, and for me to continue to do it free on YouTube means so much. If you guys could shoot us a like or subscribe as well. So enjoy the golf this week. I hope this info helped, and we will see you back on this podcast feed tomorrow. Cheers.